Tilak Davis just got disconnected. He'll be coming soon. And Tilak Davis is coming, has already reconnected. And I will 1 minute. I will ask our technical team to invite Naila Kadri. He is in the room. She cannot get connected. Vinay, please take care of that. So Balochistan, she has some technical issues. I'll just communicate to her now. So Balochistan has been a point of thing, and I think Tilak Deveshwarji will give the keynote address. We will start off right now. We will have Tilakji will speak for around 20 minutes to start with, and then it will be taken over by Munir from there. And after that, in between, Naila ji will come and she will also speak for some time. And then we will have a question answer session for the audience. We will have the facilities over here. I think it's now over to Tilak ji to address the webinar now. Tilak ji,
thank you very much, Arunji. Thank you so much for having me here. And a big hello to Mr. Munir Bengal and Professor Kadri as and when she joins. It's a very important subject that we will be discussing. And my compliments to you, Arunji, for having organized this at this particular time, because Balochistan is a very important part of the subcontinent. And I think there needs to be a greater awareness of what is happening inside Balochistan. Now, let me begin from the start. You know, a lot has been written about self-determination. But without going into theoretical details, let me say that the right to self-determination of all peoples is firmly established in international law after it was explicitly listed as a right in the UN Charter. But what is self-determination? It can be defined as a process by which a people possessing a certain degree of national consciousness determine their own statehood and form their own government. The definition of a people would be those that share common historical traditions, racial or ethnic identity, cultural homogeneity, linguistic unity, religious or ideological affinity. In other words, having the consciousness of being a distinct people. Let us analyze the Baloch quest for self-determination on these parameters and then examine how far the Baloch have been successful or can be successful. The early signs of Baloch consolidation can be traced to the confederacy of 44 tribes under Mir Jalal Khan in the 12th century, followed by Mir Chakar Rin in the late 15th and early 16th century. In the late 17th century, the Baloch tribes elected Mir Ahmad Khan as the Khan of Kalat, establishing the first Kalat confederacy that brought most of the Baloch areas under one rule. While British intervention thereafter put paid to any further political development, it is important to note that none of these empires or Baloch unity survived for long, possibly because they were based on personalities rather than on institutionalized structures. Despite this, there was some movement towards uniting the Baloch tribes and creating a nascent Baloch consciousness. This Baloch consciousness was manifested in what is called Baloch Mear, the Baloch Code of Honor. It is this that distinguishes them from others and thus formed an important feature of the Baloch identity. It gave the Baloch a consciousness that rose above tribal, political, and geographical boundaries. Two distinct linguistic streams make up the Baloch, Balochi and Brahvi. Balochi is believed to be closely related to one member of the Iranian group, Kurdish, while Brahvi has unmistakable references to the Dravidian languages of South India, especially Tamil. Despite these two streams, multilingualism is common among the Baloch and Brahvi, and both Balochi and Brahvi languages are symbols of the Baloch identity and have made important contribution in making the people conscious of their separate identity. It is interesting to note that in his address to the Baloch nation on 15th of August 1947, Khan Ahmad Yar Khan, the Khan of Kalat, declared, and I quote, "I am proud to address you in Balochi today. Inshallah, whenever I will address you in future, it will be in Balochi because it is the language of the Baloch nation," unquote. While a distinct Baloch culture, language, and identity started emerging from the 12th century onwards, it was constrained by geography, tribal barriers, and lack of communication. In modern times, several factors helped to break down such constraints. These included improved communication, development of rudimentary infrastructure and transportation, a nascent educated middle class, and most importantly, a common sense of abandonment, political marginalization, economic disparity compared with the other provinces in Pakistan, massive human rights violations, a perception of Punjabi colonization, the overbearing domination of civil military bureaucracy, and the growing fear of becoming a minority in their own land. Interestingly, religion does not distinguish Baloch identity. Balochistan itself is a multi-religious province, primarily because the Baloch have shunned religious extremism or sectarianism. Consequently, while bulk of the Baloch are Hanafi Sunnis, Shias, Hindus, and Zikris have till recently lived in harmony and without prejudice and hatred. Historically speaking, the Baloch have always had a more secular and pluralistic view on religion than their neighbors. Even in traditional Baloch society, the mullah was looked upon as a functional figure rather than a revered one. While they accept Islam as an important facet of their life, conditioning their existence, the Baloch do not see it as the most important part of their identity. One of the key developments that has molded Baloch consciousness was the forcible accession of the princely state of Kalat to Pakistan. Historically, the legal status of Kalat was different from that of other princely states. As per the Treaty of 1876, the British were committed to recognize and respect Kalat's independence. Due to this, the Khan did not join the Chamber of Princes in Delhi. He always maintained that Kalat was on a separate footing and not part of Britain's Indian Empire. Likewise, while the 560 odd princely states in India were clubbed as Category A under the political department, states like Kalat, together with Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim, were clubbed in Category B under the External Affairs Department of the Government of India. Thus, Kalat in 1947 was not really obliged to join either India or Pakistan. At a roundtable conference held in Delhi on 4th August 1947 and attended by Lord Mountbatten, the Khan of Kalat, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, it was decided that, and I quote, Kalat state will be independent on 5th August 1947, enjoying the same status as it originally held in 1838, having friendly relations with its neighbors, unquote. Based on this, the Khan declared independence. As a corollary to the Royal Roundtable Conference, a standstill agreement between Kalat and Pakistan was also signed on 4th August 1947. Jinnah and Liaquat Ali signed it on behalf of the future state of Pakistan and Sultan Ahmad on behalf of the Khanate of Kalat. Thus, by 1948, the situation was that the Khan of Kalat had declared independence. Both houses of the Kalat Assembly had endorsed this decision and rejected accession with Pakistan. The Muslim League had acknowledged the independence of Kalat as late as in August 1947. Despite all this, on 27th March 1948, the Pakistan Army invaded Kalat. The Khan surrendered and signed the instrument of accession. This was accepted by Pakistan on 30th March 1948. The Khan's signing of the instrument of accession was without obtaining formal sanction from the Baloch Sardars and in opposition to the decision of the Baloch legislature. As a result, the accession was regarded and continues to be regarded as illegal because it was only the two legislative chambers of Kalat that were authorized to decide the issue of accession, and they had already decided against accession. The Baloch have never got over their anger at the way the accession of Kalat was forced and manipulated, and they continue to treat the accession as invalid. The one common thread that runs through the history of Balochistan since 1948 is that every generation of Baloch has broken out in rebellion against the state. Every rebellion has lasted longer than the previous one. Every rebellion has encompassed a wider geographical area than the previous one, and every rebellion has involved more Baloch than the previous one. This has to say something about the legitimacy of the Pakistan state in the eyes of the Baloch. Thus, the first insurgency was in 1948 itself under Abdul Karim Khan, the brother of the Khan. The second insurgency in 1958, led by the 80-year-old Nawab Naroz Khan. The third in 1962, organized by Sher Muhammad Murray. And the fourth in 1974, led by the triumvirate of Ataullah Mengal, Ghaus Bakhsh Vizinjo, and Khair Bakhsh Murray. These insurgencies established that the Baloch did not accept the accession of Kalat with Pakistan and led to and reinforced the widespread Baloch belief that Pakistan had betrayed their trust, whether it was violating the safe conduct agreements or dismissing elected governments. Currently, the fifth insurgency is on. The historical feelings of alienation have been exacerbated due to the treatment meted out to the Baloch since 1948. Feelings that Balochistan has been increasingly colonized by the ethnically dominant Punjabis who control the central government. One common thread is that the centralizing nature of the Pakistan Federation is such that smaller nationalities like the Baloch cannot be accommodated within it. The key elements in the political alienation are lack of representation in politics, in the bureaucracy, and in the armed forces, woeful condition of education, heavy military presence in the province, apathy of the rest of Pakistan at the plight of Balochistan, and fear of becoming a minority in their own homeland. Another major element in the alienation is the exploitation of Balochistan's natural resources and inadequate allocation of funds for development. The critical resource that is at the center of Baloch estrangement is sui natural gas. Balochistan's natural gas production has been critical to Pakistan's economy. However, the Baloch have failed to benefit from their gas deposits. In fact, Balochistan consumes only 17% of its own gas, while 83% is provided to the rest of the country. As per a recent study by economist Kaiser Bengali, from 1965 to 2015, resources worth 7 trillion have been transferred to other parts of the country. Not surprisingly, the Baloch interpret the disparity between the value of gas produced in Balochistan and the poverty of the province as a consequence of their exploitation by outsiders. The impact of economic exploitation is clearly reflected in the socio-economic deprivation of the province that are the worst in Pakistan. And I'll give you a few examples. First, of the 10 highest deprived districts of Pakistan, 9 are in Balochistan. Second, the percentage of the population living in a high degree of deprivation stands at 88% in Balochistan and 25% in Punjab. Third, 13 of the most underfed districts are from Balochistan. 4. Rural poverty in Balochistan was 21% in 1998-1999, which jumped up to 57% in 2005-2006 and would be close to 70% now. 83% of the children in Balochistan face severe malnutrition. Balochistan has the highest percentage of out-of-school children at 70%. And finally, the literacy rate in Pakistan is about 58%, but in Balochistan, it is 41%. Since its forcible accession to Pakistan until the 1970s, the Baloch conflict with the state was limited largely to tribal pockets. It lacked mass national participation. Things started changing during the 1970s, when due to brutal suppression of the insurgency, a Baloch national consciousness started taking firmer roots. As a result, today, the nature of Baloch resistance is qualitatively different from the earlier periods. Now it has acquired many dimensions that are necessary for a national resistance movement to survive and to flourish. One reason for this, as a commentator put it, and I quote, the perception of running out of time among the Baloch intellectuals and opinion makers is fueling the sentiment of national salvation in our lifetime, unquote, among the politically conscious elements. The Baloch universally share the belief that as a nation, they are on the verge of becoming extinct if they don't do something about it. The Baloch national movement is not a single unified one. The nationalists can be grouped into two categories. First are the moderates, who seek maximum provincial autonomy within Pakistan. They believe in the political process, which is dialogue and participation in elections, to achieve their demands. Second, the separatists, who seek independence from Pakistan. For them, the time for a political process, dialogue, and taking the parliamentary route is long over. They have put their faith in the militant means to achieve their objectives. Both groups, however, have a common meeting ground in asserting a distinct Baloch identity and expressing frustration with Pakistan over its failure to acknowledge the historical identity of the Baloch people and to stop the exploitation of Balochistan's resources. Increasingly, the moderate Baloch politicians are getting frustrated with the policies of the Pakistan state. As you all know, recently, Akhtar Mengal broke away from supporting the PTI government for failure to implement their agreement, substantiating the position of the separatists that Pakistan cannot be trusted to fulfill their promises. Moreover, The example of the treatment meted out to the Pashtun Tahafuz movement in adjoining Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, who are just protecting for their constitutional rights, would also be an eye-opener for the Baloch. All this has further narrowed the space for moderate politicians. Geographically, the insurgency now extends to most parts of Balochistan and has transcended the tribal boundaries. It has spread into non-tribal regions such as the Makran coast, cutting across society and age groups, from the rural mountainous regions to the city centers. Baloch women and children have become involved. They have supported the armed groups through regular protest rallies. This indicates that the insurgency has permeated the ordinary people who are fighting for the cause of Balochistan. Ordinary middle-class Baloch are an important segment of the insurgency today. The insurgents include doctors, lawyers, traders, and teachers. They can all make a living, but they have chosen to fight because they see their rights violated and Balochistan's resources plundered. The most distressing aspect of the situation in Balochistan is the sharp increase in violation of human rights, especially in forced disappearances and the policy of kill and dump. I'm sure we will hear more about this from our Baloch friends. The army has been guilty of violating human rights systematically as an instrument of policy to crush the insurgency. This is borne out by reports of human rights organizations, think tanks, as well as journalists who have had access to the region. Despite the recent spread of insurgency and the growth of anti-Pakistan feeling across the province, Baloch insurgency is characterized by several weaknesses that have to be recognized. First, the small population size of the Baloch relative to the land is a major impediment. Even if the Baloch remain united, their small numbers will be a handicap vis-à-vis the Pakistan state. Militarily too, they do not have the manpower or the hardware to take on the professional Pakistani army in a conventional war. Second, the leadership of the Baloch national movement remains fractured. The lack of unity among the tribes is a major disadvantage, especially because the tribal system continues to be prevalent in some form in some parts of the province. Third, as a result of disunity, the Baloch have not been able to come up with a blueprint for governance. Resultantly, the Baloch case is marked by a lot of criticism of Pakistan, but without presenting a viable alternative. Finally, any separatist movement in Balochistan is impaired by the fact that the two countries bordering it, Iran and Afghanistan, have sizable Baloch populations of their own. That could create unrest among their own Baloch. They also view any movement towards a consolidation of a greater Balochistan, that is, the Baloch areas in Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan, as a direct threat to their territorial sovereignty. Thus, neither Iran nor Afghanistan would desire, let alone support, an independent Balochistan. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and Gwadar Port was one opportunity for Pakistan to allay Baloch grievances if they had been co-opted in their development. This, however, was not to be. Instead of taking the Baloch on port, the army has deployed 2 additional brigades in the garb of protection of CPEC, thus further militarizing the province. Moreover, CPEC itself has now come under the increasing control of the army, thereby ensuring that the Baloch will continue to be excluded from its development. To conclude, the roots of Baloch alienation and resentment run deep. The state, led by the army, just cannot or does not want to understand the import and depth of Baloch nationalism and alienation from the state. The problems have been compounded due to Pakistan's failure to acknowledge and accommodate its ethnic diversity, economic disparities, and provincial autonomy. So is the situation in Balochistan irretrievable for Pakistan? Will the insurgency dissipate with economic development, improvement in social indicators, and a genuine political process instead of packages? My sense is that for most of the Baloch themselves, the struggle seems to have gone beyond economics. In any case, the Baloch have come to view development projects as more examples of the exploitation of the resources of Balochistan for the sake of the Punjabi state. For most Baloch, it is now about their honor, about their survival with dignity on their own lands, about preserving national identity, culture, and language. In a word, about self-determination and independence. Pushed to the wall, facing marginalization, subjugation, and massive human rights violations, an increasing number of Baloch are now willing to pick up the gun for the sake of preserving their rights. The space for political accommodation seems to be fast vanishing. So, what is my prognosis? At present levels, the conflict is unlikely to threaten the integrity of the state. Pakistan's military is large with well trained troops and sophisticated weapons, making it capable of holding the country. The Pakistan army will manage to outfight the Baloch fighters at present. But whether it will manage to outlast the people who are fighting to protect their identity and their homeland is a different matter altogether. What is likely is that protracted violence will continue to afflict Balochistan. The Baloch insurgents cannot defeat the army, but they can certainly, as they have demonstrated, defy the writ of the state, increase the cost for the army to maintain its grip on the province, and prevent further exploitation of the resources. The Chinese, too, seem to be getting apprehensive of developments in the province. While there are many weaknesses within the movement, the spirit of independence and the will to fight, partly induced by the undemocratic and excessive measures by the Pakistani state, may turn the tide in favor of the Baloch, but only if there is exemplary leadership, unity amongst its ranks, a long-term strategy, and the resources to keep the movement alive. One noteworthy recent development has been the coming together of some militant groups into a united group called BRAS. It will be interesting to see how this group is able to embark on a united strategy and pool their resources, and if a united leadership and goals emerge. I would like to end with a quote from the famous Baloch poet Habib Jalim when he says, "मुझे जंग आज़ादी का मज़ा मालूम है, मुझे जंग आज़ादी का मज़ा मालूम है, बलोचों पे जुल्म की इंतहा मालूम है, मुझे जिंदगी भर पाकिस्तान में जीने की दुआ न दो, मुझे पाकिस्तान में 60 साल जीने की सजा मालूम है." Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Well, it has been a very interesting session from Tilak Daveshwar ji. He had entered into all areas of Balochistan, all what all we want to hear. We have got a scholastic information from him, and I think the audience who are agreed to the cause. There are a lot of people are allowed in who agreed to the cause, but they have got a basic awareness of what the issue is, what Balochistan stands for, and what the movements, the various groups are into, and what the sufferings are. This he has, Tarak Daveshwar has turned the talk into a major debating point. And now I do invite Munir Mangal of Baloch Voice Association. I have already spoken about Munir Mangal during my introductory speech. Munir is now in exile in Paris after having been victim of the Pakistan Army's atrocities. They destroyed his. He was to set up a television channel in Balochistan as a journalist primarily, and unfortunately he was apprehended. He was within the Pakistani Army's grab for a period of 2 years. It was almost incommunicado. There was no news where Munir was. Unfortunately for Munir, the border without journalists without borders intervened, and Munir is now in Paris. He has been a face of Baloch internationally, and he has been appearing in various United Nations forums for the cause. I do invite Mr. Munir Mangal of Baloch Voice Association to talk for a few minutes on the cause, on the issue, and to take off from where Tilak Deveshwarji has ended for the time being. Munir.
Yes. Thank you, Arun Lakshmanji. I am highly thankful to CPDS, Center for Policy and Development Studies, for organizing this webinar, particularly on the issue of Balochistan. As the topic is Balochistan quest for right to self-determination, I am highly thankful to respected Tilak Daveshwar for his detailed research, for his great presentation. He briefed us almost on all aspects of this issue, and I'm highly thankful to respected Naira Qadri ji. She is the Iron Lady of Balochistan, and she is the president of Baloch People's Congress. And hi to all others who are present here or listening to us. So whatever Talik Deshwar ji stated, just starting from the history, the Balochistan issue has never been a bilateral issue, is not a bilateral issue even today. As he stated, and these things are documented, this is the history, every evidence is there, that British, India, Pakistan, so these were the three countries. India was divided into two. Pakistan was created, an artificial state over there, and all of them, because Pakistan was the party which was close to Balochistan, agreed that Pakistan will be an independent, but Balochistan will be an independent sovereign state. Unfortunately, what happened after that, the other two parties, British and India, unfortunately, they kept their eyes closed. When Pakistan army started invading Balochistan, when the Jinnah was eyeing towards Balochistan, when Jinnah sent his troops towards Balochistan, unfortunately, that is the very painful thing for us, that India and British both kept silent, both did nothing, and that was a blatant this promise at that time. That was a big cheat from the Pakistani state, and that was big disappointment for us from India and British. Then the 5 phases of this resistance, since then, from the day of 23rd March 1948 till date, the Baloch are in a state of resistance. So for us, stating the things, like describing the HDI and all these details, Talik Deshwar stated in detail, I'm thankful to him. But for us, the meanings of this sort of statistics has changed. What we count today, we do not count that how many schools are there in our village, how many children are going to the school. Our elders, our youngers, our family members, our sisters, our daughters, our mothers count how many dead bodies we received this day, this hour, this week, this month. How many people got disappeared by force by the state? How many bodies we have received? Those are engraved on the dead bodies, tortured, mutilated dead bodies, where we see the statements which the Pakistani army has written, that Pakistan means La ilaha illallah on the flesh of our loved ones. So for us, all the things have changed since 1948. Moving ahead from that what Pakistan is doing over there and what Balochistan are receiving from Pakistan. Unfortunately, if we keep on seeing the data, I myself have written 4 books on different issues on Balochistan, like this one, Enforced Disappearances. So we have details, data. We receive monthly reports from Vice from Baloch Missing Persons, Mama Kadir. Unfortunately, is not there. We have been presenting these data to different international forums, particularly at the United Nations. We have been speaking at different forums. I myself, as in the intro, Arunji said that I was a missing person for 2 years by the hands of the Pakistani army. But in 2016, I only tried to organize a conference in Bangkok. You can see my picture in the internet, that I was handcuffed and I was arrested in Bangkok only for organizing a conference speaking about Balochistan, and I was deported back to France. Later on, in 2017, I went to Japan, and in the Senate of Japan, there was a conference and about Balochistan. On the way back from Japan, in Malaysia. The flight was via Kuala Lumpur. So I was arrested over there, and I stayed, 2 nights in the prison, and later on I was deported back to France. Now, this is the reality that Baloch is a main party. Baloch has to struggle because there's no other way for Baloch to survive. Baloch are resisting that. And this is not true that there's you can say, armed struggle. Why? Because the Baloch are armless. The Baloch are not only armless, Baloch are also brotherless. That is why this issue has not been resolved from the last 70 years. We are fighting by ourselves. We are fighting by giving our blood, by giving our flesh, by giving our properties. And on the other side, Pakistan army has arms. They are killing us. They are killing us in a very brutal way. And if the Baloch get, a brother or arms, then the situation will change over there, whatever we are seeing today. Everybody knows this thing, that today the world is a global village. There's no single issue in the globe that is related to one or two parties. In the same way, Baloch issue is not an issue between Pakistan and Balochistan. It is an issue among the regional states. It's also an international issue, because not only the Baloch are related to that. Today we see it. All are related to that issue. South Asia is not such a region where the rest of the world could close her eyes and see whatever either Pakistan or China is doing. Let them do. No, we do not have any interest. Everybody has an interest, but the level of responsibilities is different. Baloch has a responsibility. They are resisting. And on the other side, I do say this thing, that India also has a responsibility in that issue. And we see a lacking from the Indian side, that they have not fulfilled it. From the first day when Pakistani army entered Balochistan, at that time, India kept silent. And even today, when our dead bodies are being thrown by helicopters, our daughters, sisters are being wrapped in the army torture cells, we do not see such strategic policy from the Indian side to counter that. When I came to Europe here, roaming in the different, capitals of the different countries, moving into different institutes like IFRI, ERIS, European Parliament, United Nations, so many institutes. There, I got that without making a comprehensive international strategic, plan and policy, Baloch people will not get their sovereignty on their land. And for that, we see Quad must play a role. Quad means the 4 countries: Australia, India, America, and Japan. They have to play a role. When in 2007, Quad was initially established, in 2017, approximately after 10 years, later on, I visited Japan. I met with the senior advisor of Shinzo Abe, the Premier Minister. He was behind this idea to create 4 countries alliance. That's not only alliance for strategic policies, that's also a military alliance. So without a role playing by that Quad, Balochistan will not get its independence. And unfortunately, in 2017 May, the senior advisor of Shinzo Abe, Premier Minister, told me that we are disappointed. I said, why? He said, by the role of India. Today, we see Mr. Modi ji in 2017. I'm speaking of 2017. Even today, Modi ji is there. He is a very prominent and a very strong leader of the Indian people. And on the other side, we see another strong leader, Mr. Trump. And in the presence of these such strong leaders, if we are seeing that China is, sneezing in that region with much more strength, with much more multi-layered policies, and unfortunately, we are lacking. So the disappointment of that Quad will disappoint the people of the whole region. If this is my point of view, everybody has a right to either accept or negate it. But if I think that if Quad, lost, it means all of us are in waters. No one can save that region from China, and if the Quad did not play and did not took the responsibility to play a lead role. Moving ahead, in this 2020, towards that region, we see that China had moved ahead than Pakistani inside Balochistan moved towards Iran. China took Chabar. That's a big disappointment for us, at least we, the people who are in the region. I have spoken to Baloch leaders who were there, even somehow they are playing politics under the Pakistani that parliament system. Even they are highly terrified. They are highly disappointed. There are no words to express that why India lost Chaba. I think if we have to see life in that region, if we have to look forward for that region, then India should be empowered with more policies, with more multi-layered, structured policies and plans, and should fulfill those policies, at least to give a hope of breath to the people of that region. Without that, I think peace and stability cannot be gained in whole South of Asia. Now, everybody sees this. I think you people are more learned and you have, more focused towards that region. That the main game in that region is that how China should get access to Afghanistan. For that, the people's life does not matter. Pakistan has killed thousands of Baloch people. Pakistan has an intention and as support of China, they will keep on killing millions of Baloch people, not only Baloch. They will keep killing Kashmiris, particularly the Kashmiris in the Pakistani occupied Kashmir, Afghanis, Sindhis. They have an intention to eliminate all of them. They have already put the grains of a new generation that is called a Chinese Punjabi generation. So they are developing that creed, a new population, by marrying the Punjabi girls by the Chinese people. So a new generation of Pakistan, China will be developed over there. That's called the Punjabi Chinese genes. That is the aim of China and Pakistan, to eliminate these people, loot their resources, oppress the region. China already has got strategic access to Gawadar. So by getting Gawadar, everybody can see this thing, that what China means from this. They are going to develop a naval base over there. Earlier, they were saying, no, there are no military designs. No, they are saying it openly that we must build a naval base at Gwadar. On the other side, we see what we have done, what we Baloch, we have expectations only from India and from the civilized world of civilized communities like Europe and America. We have been seeing on them, we have expectations on them, and we are also keenly analyzing what roles, what policies they have structured over there, whether we have a place in their policies at least to breathe in our land or no. So with respect to that, whatever I said, that India already India's Chabahar, and earlier US and Europe was telling us that we are engaged in Afghanistan. These were the words of ex French Interior Minister Kouchner in 2010. He personally told me that at this time we cannot speak about Pakistan. We cannot, give any statement because our army is engaged in Afghanistan. Later on, when Bonn conference was being done in Germany, at that time, the German foreign minister said, yes, now the time has came, we have to think about Pakistan. But today, approximately 10 years have passed. Now, Europe has left that region. USA is planning to leave Afghanistan. So what we can expect from such a policy? We are seeing that China is keenly trying to get access to that region. We have, this is, my advice, because from this forum, I think today I am linked with the people of India. So I'm just trying to say those words from which we expect that we can get a lifeline, that there should be some sort of committee, some sort of forum that under the state ownership, a committee of the regional people, or a committee that should make policies for the region, where at least the people of Balochistan, people of Sindh, Pakistani occupied Kashmiri, and some policy makers from India should at least sit together, talk to each other, analyze the region in detail. And we have seen this sort of committees, forums in the North American side. There the country do not say why the USA or other countries are interfering in our issues by making such committee. Only making a policy making committee, I think, is the need of the time. If we do not make a committee where at least we should continuously, regularly sit and discuss and analyze the issues, how we can make strategic policies and trust for a long term, and we can move ahead on that, if until and unless we do not sit together. For that, there is a need to make at least a committee of a few people, maybe 1 or 2 persons from each side, Kashmiri, Sindhi, Baloch, and Pashtun, and from the Indian side, from different institutes of the South Asia. They can sit, give us advice. We can also tell them the details, what's happening. And other than that, the role in UN, because we have been speaking at United Nations at different times on different issues about CPEC, about human rights issues. Earlier, only Pakistan was the country that was stopping our voice, but now China, both of them have stopped our voices. You can see different videos at the UN, and they have stopped me from speaking. They have stopped other Balochs from speaking. Even they have making such problems for us that getting entry to United Nations should be a problem for the Baloch people. So this is the reality. But on the other side, we have heard voices from the Indian representatives about the human rights issues, but we have not seen a clear stand from the Indian side, because what is the procedure, how we can knock the doors of the UN uh, through a systematic process. For that, we have to make other countries to raise the issue, other countries to raise the issue and support this issue at United Nations. And for that, a particular party cannot play a role. For that, a country can play a role. Yes, the Baloch can be a member and can be a playing member of that diplomacy, but there should be a backing of the state. When the states sit together for the voting, then the states, they see that which country is putting some sort of on the table and which country has to support that. For that, India has a good relationship with the African countries. Indian policy makers, Indian ambassadors should talk to African nations which support them, that there is an issue of Gulistan. We have to bring this issue on the table in the United Nations, and there should be a backing of that resolution from such countries. So I think for that, there's a need to make a forum or a government in exile like that, which should play a practical role to bring this issue at the United Nations in a proper and systematic way. These are the two, you can say, my advices at this time. And whatever respected Tilak Deshwar said, I think there's no need for us to repeat the things of the history and to tell the things of human rights issues and the other aspects of the struggle. So I'm thankful to Arun Lakshmanji. I'm thankful to CPDS for organizing this webinar. And this, unfortunately, today we are missing Mama Kadir Baloch because there's no internet in that region. So this is the information I got, and so thank you, Sir Arun Lakshmanji.
Munir, thank you, Munir. It was a quite interesting take from you on what the mind of the Baloch is. But I have to have a small disagreement on that, because Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the one world leader who openly supported the cause in an Independence Day speech at Bradford, taking the Baloch cause into a different proposition across globally. But of course, I think that we have definitely received what you have spoken, and we will communicate that to the public through the media. We'll be giving release on that, and I think I will be exploring on the Chabar thing, what you mentioned, and also on the Balochistan government in exile. That's a big point you have made over here, and the Quad that you spoke to the Sinsei advisor on the 4 countries, Australia, India, US, and Japan. Quad is not a it's a military thing. That was what you talked about. I think you will speak about that, and now I will have Tilak Deveshwarji later respond to the points raised by Munir. After Professor Naila Kadri will speak. And now I invite Professor Naila Kadri Baloch, the chairperson of Baloch People's Congress. Naila ji has come to my hometown, a remote part of the northern part of Kerala, in Talseri. She addressed a public gathering in our hometown, and it was a big news. She is speaking about 3 trillion tons. So first word was like that. I am addressing the Chinese mothers and Chinese grandmothers that you are wearing the ornaments, the gold ornaments, which were looted. 3 trillion tons of gold was looted from us, from our country, from our people. And also the trauma, the dropping from helicopter of a woman who was mutilated bodies. Her husband, what Mustafa Resani, the filmmaker, who faced in the prison of in Balochistan, and how she and her family had to live in exile in Afghanistan, in Kabul, Kandahar, and the grenade attack in front of her house, all those things, and she coming into social life at the age of 8, come bringing grouping the school children together, and being a leader, a student leader against Ziaul Haq's military regime, and even taking a Kalashnikov in Lahore University of Punjab, coming against the Jamaat Islamist movement. And so I think Professor Naila Kadri Baluch, who is in Vancouver, Canada, she maybe it is 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. She has come up, woken up, and on live and welcoming Professor Naila Kadri Baluch to this seminar, webinar. I think you have heard about Tilakji Deveshwar, who spoke about the history, the conundrums, what is happening in Balochistan. Then Munir speaking about his heart out here. And now I want Nailaji also to come out with what she has in mind. Welcome, Nailaji. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the webinar. Nailaji, yours. You're unmute your this thing. Please unmute. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Namaskar. Namaste to our friends here. I can see Arunji, very sweet memories of Talshri. Thank you so much. Um, um, Honorable, respectable Tilak Darwish, Tilak Devashar ji, and Waja Munir Mengal, President of Baluch Voice Association, our youth icon, our hero in United Nations and in European Union. Yeah. Thank you, the other participants here. It's very beautiful when we Baloch people connect with our Indian friends because it's a great relationship of thousands of years of history that we share together. And sometimes when I say that Baluchistan is the grandmother of Indian civilization and the civilization of Middle East too. So when we speak about self-determination, so it's more to academically, it's more correct thing that you speak, but when we, the Baluch people, look at it, we very clearly call it liberation. We clearly call it emancipation from the occupation of Pakistan and Iran. And we very clearly say it, our sovereignty. And it's nothing new. It's just restoration of our sovereignty because we were a sovereign country for last 700 years before the military occupation of Balochistan by Pakistan. British had done very cunningly and very cleverly. They cut the different parts of Balochistan through different lines, like the line of Goldsmith and the line of Durand and line of McMahon. And they took pieces of Balochistan on lease, and but still the sovereign government of Balochistan was there, and it was again divided into states, and then calling Balochistan a princely state is also it doesn't get in our ears with a pleasant that, because we were a sovereign country with our own international borders of that time, and our own system of law and constitution, and our own system of justice, and our own system of governance there. And our foreign policy, only after the British colonization of the India and then the region, we had only the foreign policy that was bonded with British, with the contracts between the representative of the British Crown and Balochistan, the Crown of Balochistan. So their representatives were there. So we were not ruled by British. We were not a colony of. We were colonized first time by Pakistan, actually. And after that, like even when Pakistan artificially created by British for their own interests in the region, at that time, even the parts of Balochistan, those were given to Iran through a Goldsmith line. Actually, Iran had no right there, and their forces, they never had the courage to enter there. But slowly, as Pakistan crushed Balochistan, our battles of the war of independence, the war of liberation is going on from the day first, 27th March 1948 till today. But there are different battles, you can say. So as Pakistan started crushing Balochistan with massive military bombs, bombardment, and mass killings, and rape and torture, and disappearances, and all this, Iran directly took advantage of that situation, and then step by step, gradually, they were in the Iranian occupied Balochistan. There was all the time there were different battles were going on, or the war of independence was there too. It's not that it was a quiet land. The Balochs were, you have like the resistance of Dadsha, and the resistance of Rahim-Zard Koi, and the resistance of Baranzai, and it was also going on as the central Balochistan was resisting against the occupation of Pakistan. Very clearly, because we are talking to people who have very clear minds here, that the policy of India towards Balochistan, we can understand that the movements of liberation of India have always supported the movements of liberation of Balochistan, or the movements, they were against the level of British involvement, because we were not direct colony, but British involvement was there everywhere. And they were gradually increasing through the tribal chiefs, the tribal sardars they have in their pockets, in British pockets, and they created them as a states, because there were no states in Balochistan like Lasbela or Makran and Haran and all this, but it is a British creation there. And they pampered the people, the Sardars there, to stand against the central government, and then create a situation that British had more space to enter. So there was a people's resistance in Balochistan, and it was anti-Sardar resistance because no Sardar was there at that time, when Balochistan was in struggle against British colonization or British infiltration in Baloch society. So at that time, we remember people. So this, in that situation, what happened actually, that the people of India, or the organization, the mass movements of Indian liberation of India, they supported us. But when India divided into pieces, directly it affected Baloch movements and Baloch people in a very negative way, because the resistance movement or the liberation movement of India itself was manipulated by those who were very close or who were directly on the very favorite lists of British themselves, like Jinnah. The situation was there in India too. And that was the reason that with the liberation of India, with the independence of India, I shouldn't say the word liberation, still it's a process, it's going on, it should go with the democracy. But the independence of India from the British rule, till 1956, there was huge presence in the system, a huge presence of British power was in the systems of India and Pakistan both. So our representatives went, Mir Ghazal Bashir Zanjo went to India and met Nehruji and another, the Prime Minister of Balochistan met Kalam Azad, Azad Sahib, but they were not totally independent actually. And Balochistan was never supported from the government of India. We still have a huge support from the people of India, wherever we have gone. The whole India I have visited, and I have got overwhelming support, a huge Indian people's love and ownership of Baloch independence movement I have seen, I have experienced, especially the youth. But the level of Indian government, what it is doing, actually the taking over of the Chabar port, the Chabar ports taking over by China, proves what I said in India in 2016, that the Indian government is not ready to support Baloch independence